Now we have to talk about taxing the ultra rich. I'm
Yes.
interested to see if you're going to be able to convince me that they don't deserve it, that they don't deserve this punishment. I have a firm belief that people care less about poor people, but they do really hate the rich.
Yes, they do.
It offends them more. Like when you start talking about Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk, people just get like, how dare they be that wealthy? We can't look at their accomplishments and that we rely on Amazon or that we love Teslas or any of those things. It's just, it offends us that somebody could be so wealthy and have so much and we can have so little at times. So I'm curious as to what your position is on this new tax on the ultra rich and if you could explain it for people.
Yeah, for sure. So I wanted to differentiate. There was a proposal that was floating around hard. I mean, there were so many trial balloons, it blocked out the sun. Like people said it was an eclipse, but like we know that what it was. So there was a proposal for a wealth tax, and that was to go after, like you just described, like the super duper ultra rich. And even to that argument, I would say, okay, but you're eventually going to run out of Galen Westons and Jimmy Pattisons as your boogeyman / scapegoat, right? Because it seems so simple. And hey, I don't think a wealth tax would affect anybody on this chat right now. But if we look at it practically, it seems so simple, right? Find the guy with the top hat and the monocle and the bag with the money print on it and go take it. Right? The problem is, number one, like you can't do that because that's stealing. Number two, even as government, one, you'll run out of those people. So there's only so many super duper uber wealthy people. Three, they already pay a lot of tax, like a heck of a lot of tax. In fact, that's often why this is a dirty little secret in the NHL. That's often why we lose hockey players to the States. I know, because they pay way less income tax down there in the States than they do up here, because we have a pretty aggressive pay scale when it comes to income taxes in Canada across the country. So basically, it doesn't work. A wealth tax doesn't work. And we can even look at France, okay? France tried a wealth tax. So people who are that filthy rich, they're pretty smart and they want to keep their money. So they have a team of lawyers and accountants and like tax specialists who move their money around the world, like way smarter than me. They figure out a way to keep that money out of government's hands anyway. Two, they'll just leave. So that's what happened in France. So all these super duper wealthy people said, you know what? This isn't really worth it. We're going to leave. So much so that they had to reverse course. The French government had to make an announcement, tail tucked between its legs. You know what? No more wealth tax. Please come home. We're so sorry. And apparently, I can't remember if it was Macron or who it was. And I'm paraphrasing in French. He said, we became Cuba, but without the sunshine. So they tried that and it didn't work. So what they did do, though, is they increased what's called the capital gains tax. So capital gain, if I'm a little bit murky, but say you've got a lot of stocks and investments and you sell those investments or stocks, you pay tax on that, of course, even though you're investing it with after-tax money, by the way. Like you're taking your income after it's been income taxed and sales taxed and what's left, and you're investing it. If you make money on it, guess what? The government takes some of that too. It's kind of mind-numbing.
Only on the profits though, correct?
On the profits, correct. And so what they did is they increased that percentage. I forget to what. I think it's
50 to 66.6%.
Holy smokes, that's even higher than I thought. I thought it was up to 50. Yeah, so that's a lot. Now, again, that may not affect people directly right now, but here's how it will affect them. Number one, if you own a secondary property, say you have a condo that's in a city, say you're living in like a secondary city or the country, and you have a condo in a major city that, you know, your kid uses for university or you rent it out and you're counting on it as your nest egg, that's a secondary property and you pay capital gains tax on that. So this will mean that some of those properties, I think people are going to hold off on selling them. So that could become a problem because that means that that will slow down the supply of housing. Number two, this is actually now affecting doctors, so much so that even anecdotally, so I was in Foothills Hospital in Calgary recently with a friend of mine, and two doctors, totally unprompted, like saw my jacket, and they said, yeah, I've got a bunch of people I went to med school with, and they're all thinking of moving to the States. because of this capital gains tax increase. And that's because doctors, the way that their pay is structured, they're a private company basically, and they have to pay staff if they have an office, and the way it's structured, they were going to get nailed with higher taxes because of this move. Now, I don't know actually if the federal government thought this one through, because I sure don't think that they were expecting doctors coming up and saying, you know what, I'm out of here. And it wasn't just me hearing this in Calgary. This was raised so often that a reporter asked a minister in Trudeau's government about this. Hey, what about all these doctors saying, you know what, I've had it. I'm leaving. I already pay a ton of money in taxes and I'm going to head south. The minister's response was so glib. She said something to the effect of, oh, that's okay. We'll just go hire doctors from other countries. Like as if there's some ready-made doctor store and we can just go shopping at the doctor store, and that doctor shortages are not like a global problem, especially for the West. Like, so that makes me think that they didn't think this through. So by and large, wealth taxes are a little bit different from capital gains taxes, but the capital gains taxes, even if you don't think like, you know, you're not a wheeler dealer on the stock market or whatever, it will probably affect you in the case that we're going to have employers and people like doctors, unfortunately, taking themselves and their money elsewhere. And keep in mind that we're not just losing then that vital requirement of having a doctor in your town. They're taking that wealth with them. So the income tax that they're already paying, like today, that the government is counting on, will then be gone. That leaves a big hole, especially if you get a lot of people who have a lot of money, who already pay a lot of income tax and capital gains taxes, leaving. Now we're getting into some serious deficit territory. So this was not a smart move. And I'll leave you one with this, which blew my mind. So the amount that they're increasing it by, like how much they're going to collect in this big, you know, let's balance the budget on the backs of the rich. One, they're never going to balance the budget. They have no plans whatsoever to balance the budget. Their deficit is more than $40 billion. Two, the Trudeau government is going to spend this tax increase money in 4 days. I have lunch meat in my fridge that is going to last longer than how much money they're taking in with this tax. So it's pretty astonishing for the amount of damage it's doing versus the amount of money that they're going to be able to spend for how many days. It's a head scratcher. I don't know why they did this.
There's two pieces I should follow up on. One, I think it's after the first $200,000 or $250,000 that it goes up to the 66%.
Okay.
It stays at the 50 below that. Tim, feel free to fact check me on that.
It's a lot. I know it's a lot. Yeah.
And then two, the other thing that I was hearing Vashi Kaplos talk about on her show was that doctors were told and encouraged to use the business structure that you just described for the past 20 years as the mechanism to support them. And so government changing course on this all of a sudden without any consultation or discussion is also, I think, quite frustrating to them, because they were told and encouraged to use the system that they use in order to plan for retirement. And again, it comes back to this. I think people often, they say they love the poor and they want to do things for the poor, but they really just hate the rich, because your doctor should be financially comfortable. Like, we don't want doctors to be just getting by. No. They provide an essential service in our society. They help people get through things. But I think the challenge, and a lot of different things are coming to a head, is I can't get more than maybe 10 minutes with my doctor. And there's a sign that I used to see in the doctor's office that said one problem per meeting. And so I think people are looking at doctors right now and going, I'm not getting the best care from you to begin with. So maybe you do deserve a punishment that would ideally encourage you to act as a better actor in this medical system. And I know we lack doctors, and I know they're stretched too thin, but so many things it feels like are colliding on our healthcare system that are causing challenges. And one of them is this one issue per visit kind of approach. Yeah,
it's a great question. Are you getting good value for money? Right. And I think, unfortunately, most of the things that the government controls, including things like healthcare, the answer is no. Like, these guys can't run a passport office. Like, they're really bad at most things. And that's interesting, because I had heard that the government has encouraged us to do this for a long time, like do their structure this way. And one of the doctors I was speaking with at the hospital, he said something like, you can't change the rules mid-game. Like, this feels like it's a betrayal. And so I was trying to focus on my friend, but I didn't quite know exactly what he meant. And then I went back and researched it. And you're absolutely right that they were encouraged to do it this way for this long. The same way, a lot of Canadians have put all of their nest egg into one basket in owning a home for folks who were fortunate enough to be able to own a home going back a few years. And now the government is sniffing around home equity. And maybe we're going to try to take wealth out of your home. Like that's been a verboten no-go zone since the 1970s, like well over a generation. And now they're scared that the government is going to change the rules mid-game. Very, very similar.